Welcome to The Third Story. I'm Leo Sidran, coming to you with another classic episode from the archive in honor of the new partnership between this podcast and listener-supported WBGO Studios. All month, we're revisiting some of my favorite episodes from over the years, and then starting in June, I'll be back with all new, fresh episodes. You can find these at wbgo.org/studios, where you will also discover their ever-expanding selection of hipster content. And if you want to dig on the full Third Story podcast archive, you'll find that at third-story.com, where we've always been. And you can also find me at Third Story Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. This episode originally ran in February of 2021, but since we're talking to a master of time, a practitioner of the pulse, a philosopher of feel, this conversation is right on time, anytime. Of course, I'm referring to drummer Eric Harland, who I spoke to, and who you will be hearing from momentarily. What you'll hear is the original introduction, followed by me and the great Eric Harland getting all the way into it. Third Story Podcast, WBGO Studios, Eric Harland. Here we go. Amanda Sidran.
Leo Sidran.
Do you know when the last time was that you joined me on an introduction to this podcast?
I do not know, so I'm going to guess pre-pandemic.
It was actually February of 2020.
Wow.
Speaking of memories, Amanda.
Yes.
I talked to drummer Eric Harland this week.
I know him.
What do you know about Eric Harland, Amanda?
Well, I have typed his name 100,000 times, probably, because I have the good fortune of working with Dave Harland, who is a world-renowned bassist and generally all-around good guy. He often works with Eric Harland, and I've worked on a few of their releases together, so I know his name that way. I also know that in February of 2011...
That's right. So that's 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yes.
We were at a Packer party at Fedora in the West Village. I was about 6 months pregnant. After that party ended, we went to the Village Vanguard to see Aaron Goldberg play, and Eric Harland was his drummer that night.
That's right.
I remember I didn't feel so well, and we took a taxi home, and I ended up in the hospital in preterm labor.
See, the way I remember that story and the way I framed it to Eric, and so you'll have to back me up on this, corroborate the story, is that he played a solo.
Yeah, so long.
And so outrageous, intense. And as you know, I also play the drums. I don't in any way compare myself to Eric Harland, but I remember you looking at me and going, now that's a drum solo.
Yeah, that may be true.
And then that sent your body into a kind of frenzy.
Convulsions.
Yes. I mean, the other way to think about it is...
Either that or Sol, our daughter, was just grooving so hard that she wanted to come out right now. Just let me at it.
I mean, it speaks highly of our daughter, really, that she heard that trio and she heard Eric Harland play that solo and she said, I'm ready. If that's what it means to be on the planet, I'm ready. Get me out of here.
Get me out of here. Fortunately, we talked her into sticking around for a little bit longer.
And then she wouldn't leave.
Eventually, she left. And she's been in jazz clubs ever since.
That's right. So what you say is true. We had an experience that was in some ways, activated by Eric and his ferociousness. This might seem incredible, but I wanted to see if there was any document of Eric Harland playing at the Vanguard that week that we saw him with Aaron Goldberg. And I looked online, and believe it or not, the night that we were there, it was broadcast on NPR. So incredibly, I have in my possession a recording of the solo that sent you into the hospital. When I talked to him, I realized, coincidentally, it wasn't like in honor of you going into labor or anything like that. But when we scheduled it, I looked at the calendar to see when was this event that I remembered, and it was a decade, almost to the day.
Ooh.
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
So we talked, and I mean, a few things I guess I just want to tell you, and by extension, those who may possibly be listening, all 17 of you.
Lay it on me.
A couple things you need to know about Eric Harland. He came from Houston. He went to this high school in Houston, HSPVA. Beyonce went there. Robert Glasper went there. Jason Moran went there. I talked to him earlier this year about that same school. Our friend Alan Hampton went there. Chris Dave, the innovative, funky, hip-hoppy crossover drummer, went there. Kendrick Scott, another incredible drummer, went there. Mike Moreno, the guitar player, went there. Walter Smith, the saxophone player, went there. This is a school that in a short amount of time generated a huge amount of jazz musicians. He belongs to that generation. He also went through a period, he'll tell us, so I don't need to tell you too much, where he thought maybe he wanted to be a minister. He came to Manhattan School of Music in New York right out of high school. Then he went back to Texas and became an ordained minister. Then launched himself on his trajectory that we know as this great drummer.
What a great story.
Unbelievable story. And I think that that's kind of what I want to tell you about this conversation. Sometimes when I talk to musicians like this who are so prolific and have worked with so many great artists and made so many great records and have left such a big stamp, I feel intimidated and overwhelmed, like I'm supposed to somehow ask some specific questions. Like somebody's going to be listening going, why didn't you talk to him about Kurt Rosenwinkel? Or why didn't you talk to him about Josh Redman? Or why didn't you talk to him about this or that? And the fact is he's played with so many people and he's made so much history that it's overwhelming. And instead, in those situations, I remember feeling this way before I talked to Chris Potter, the saxophonist who also works a lot with Eric Harland.
And Dave Holland.
I remember feeling a similar way, like, I think I have to be specifically prepared. And what I realized is somebody else can do that. What I can do is just lock in with the person and be in the moment and just experience that hour of space and time with them. And Eric and I went there pretty quickly. That's what he does. He goes into the space. He goes into the zone and he locks in. He's really interested in meditation and in mindfulness, and you can feel it from him. So what this conversation is kind of just an hour of us going into this zone together. And he does tell incredible stories. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I missed, but what I got is like really stunning. He was such a joy to talk to.
Sounds like a good hang.
I don't know if people can't see the look I'm making, but it is one of pride, swelling pride and joy to be married to you, you incredible person. Amanda, thank you for joining me.
Anytime.
I hope it's not another year, honestly.
We'll just have to wait and see.
Without further ado, here's my conversation with the great Eric Harland. Eric Harland, 10 years ago, I can't believe we're having this conversation right now because when we set this up, I went to my calendar to check to see when this thing was that I want to tell you about. And it was 10 years ago this week. You were playing at the Village Vanguard with Aaron Goldberg.
Oh, my goodness.
I went to go see you play with my wife. She was 6.5 months pregnant.
Wow.
You played a solo that literally sent my wife to the hospital.
What?
We went home that night and she started to go into labor and it was too early. She had to go to the hospital and they had to stop her body from delivering this baby prematurely.
Wow.
We always joke about that drum solo that sent her into labor. And man, when we set this up, it was like it's 10 years almost to the day. It was this week 10 years ago. I just looked it up.
What? Oh, my goodness. Okay. Hey. I guess it was a good night. I guess me and the boys we were in festive spirits, I love those guys, Aaron and Ruben. Oh, man, the family. Now you got me kind of missing live shows. I've been doing lately is, repairing the washing machine and shoveling the driveway, putting new faucets on the sinks. I was like, I'm going to have to update my resume.
You don't live in town, right? You live outside of the city, right?
Yeah, I live in PA, man. I'm out here in the trenches. I'm in the woods. It's nice, too, because, one, I get to look at this beautiful snow. And I know it's not going to get all, mushy and nasty in the next couple of days and stuff like that. So it's wonderful. Just in the forest, in the trees, just with the fam, man. We're having a good time.
For somebody who spent so much time on the road, what is it like to be home for so long?
Man, honestly, that's my speed. Being on the road wasn't my speed. Like I was doing it and I was maintaining it because, it was paying the bills. I mean, more than just paying the bills.
Mm-hmm.
I got to get past that. It's funny, you get older, all you think about is, I got to pay these bills, But you forget about the reason why you really went out there to actually play music is because of the passion and the love and the connection with the people and all that. I've enjoyed being home because a lot of my time has been spent away from the family.
Yeah.
My kids are 20 and 18 now, and I'm like, where did that time go? So now just having a year to be around them has been special. The conversations, the questions they may have. I'm home and, I'm available.
Yeah.
It's not like this weird, well, daddy's off the sound check. I'll FaceTime y'all later kind of vibe. And then later never happens because you get tired. You got to go to bed because you got a 5:30 lobby call, It's been really great. I've caught up on a lot of sleep. Tons of sleep. Oh my God. I mean, I'm averaging 8 to 10 hours every night. For a while, it felt weird to feel so rested because it was like my body was like, where's all the panic? Where's the anxiety? Like, where is the hustle and the bustle? Like the need to move? Like it all just went away. I did miss it a little bit. I'm kind of like a high energy person, even in my, mellowness. So what I would start doing was just, developing like a workout routine and just finding stuff to do around the house to kind of keep me busy. But I never got bored. I never got to this point to where like, oh my God, I'm frustrated. I'm at home. I can't do anything. It's like, I just go practice. I go down, in the studio, play the drums. Man, that's it. That's a hang, it's a vibe. So
you posted a video on your Instagram page, I don't know, a couple months ago of you as a 15-year-old playing some bebop drums.
Uh-huh.
Now, there's a lot to unpack in that video.
Yeah.
Part of it is your physicality, and part of it is your playing and your whole vibe and your demeanor. I mean, if you're 15 years old in that video, let's just start there. Uh-huh. You were on the path, deep on the path already.
Wow. Okay.
But that's just undeniable. There's no question about that. Yeah. Also, you were physically much, much larger. I mean, hundreds of pounds heavier than you are today.
Yeah, I was 400 pounds, man. Yeah, I definitely got to 400 pounds, if not over. I used to be like a 58 in the waist. Imagine that. I could only shop at this store called Casual Male Big and Tall, I used to hate going in there because I knew it was just like, man, just lose the weight, bro. Just lose the weight. You're just being lazy. But it was like, Southern cooking. Man, my grandma and my dad and my mom, they were all great cooks. Mm-hmm. And we loved to eat, and they loved to eat. It's just, I just ate so much more. I would just wake up in the morning, eat like this big old Tupperware bowl of cereal. Then on my way to school, I would stop at McDonald's and get like 2 sausage and biscuits and hash browns, jumbo orange juice, whatever. Then I get to school, get an apple pie, be like, cool, that was breakfast. And then, lunch, same thing, chicken tenders and tater tots. And then that would finally carry me through school. Then, school was over, 2:30, 3 o'clock. On my way home, I was like, man, I might have to hit that McDonald's again. It looked like they calling me, those golden arches, talking to me. So, man, I would literally stop. Knowing that I was going home to have dinner, I would stop again and get and if they had that 2 Big Mac, large fried meal, easy. And then I'd be ready for dinner, whatever that was, eat that. And then my dad was notorious for having like a big old bowl of ice cream every night. And so that just became my habit. So before I knew it, man, I was like 400 pounds. And then plus being with my mom, we was heavy into the church. And anybody that understands like non-denominational churches or, very evangelical type of churches is that it's not just on Sunday. You probably got 3 services on Sunday. And then you got choir rehearsal probably on Wednesday, maybe Thursday, something on the weekend, Bible study. So you always out late. And then being out that late, it's just the habit of, after service is over, everybody's hungry. So you go to Jack in the Box. It's always fast food, always fast food. I don't know why. And if Jack in the Box was closed or something like that, everybody hosts up at Waffle House or Denny's. And it's just, all that food is just so packed with calories and sodium, everything that's just not good for the body. So I knew I had to make a decision. And fortunately, a lot of that decision was made for me by being able to go to MSM and come to New York, because I was no longer in that same pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. It was like, I had to walk everywhere. And it kind of started the year before. Like, I started making a conscious decision. So by my senior year, I did start to lose some weight. And then the rest of it just fell off when I got to New York. I wasn't eating like 12 times a day. I was maybe eating twice. And then, I really got into, spirituality and meditation. Couple of years I was at MSM, I was at the Union Theological Seminary, which led to me going to the actual Houston Baptist University to study seminary theology there after Manhattan School of Music. So I got into this thing about fasting, and man, I would go like a week without eating just to try. I mean, it was horrible for my body, but I was young, and I was like, let me try this out. And it was great. It was fantastic.
Watching that video of you at 15 years old and 400 pounds playing those great bebop drums, I felt there was a part of you that was very in control of your instrument, of the music, and then there was another part of you that was totally in chaos and out of control when it came to your body. You had some sense of discipline and some sense of being totally undisciplined. I mean, it at least seems like you were disciplined when it came to the music.
Yeah, well, again, I grew up in the church, and that's all I really knew was the drums. I mean, funny, I actually started as a piano player, but my mom she was so, I don't want to use the word controlling. She was a perfectionist in her own way. And piano is her instrument. So for her, she was like, well, if you're going to play piano, you're going to have to learn the way I learned, basically. And then I just don't learn like that. She was very disciplined. Like, you got to learn these scales, and you got to sit here and play the scale till you know it backwards and forwards. I was like, I'll get to that. I just don't even know if I like it yet. And so I just wanted to play around with the instrument, hear the sound, maybe come up with something different. I don't know. I was just trying to figure out some ways of what to do. But anyway, long story short, I just said, forget that. I'm just play the drums. Because, when I started playing the drums, she didn't know if I was practicing the right thing or not, because it was just all sound. But I was just surrounded by drummers, my whole life. And then I was fortunate to be with, one of the world's best drum teachers, Mr. Craig Green, who not only taught me, but he taught Chris Dave and this other drummer, Mark Simmons, Kid Scott, Jemiah Williams, like the whole tandem of drummers coming from Houston. So we had this community even then, because we all went to the same high school. And Chris and Mark Simmons, they were like older than me. So they kept me honest. When I sounded like crap, they would be like, dude, you suck, man. You need to come on, man. And especially Mark Simmons, man. Mark Simmons, he would set up 2 drum sets during school, embarrass me daily. Like, he would just be like, let's go. And he would just start playing all this ridiculous, crazy stuff around the kid. And he would be like, come on, man, what you got? And I was just like, I don't got that. But doing that is what made me better. It's because we pushed each other. And even to the point that I started to get good, and I would go back like, yo, what you working on? What you doing? Don't get lazy. Don't get slothful. Like, let's go. What you got? And that kind of motivation always pushed us for reasons we didn't know why we were trying to do that for ourselves, but it just opened the horizon for us. And then next thing we know, we all became like traveling, musicians playing with various bands. And then that started to kind of cave out the pathway of the direction that each one of us took. Like Mark Simmons became more fusion. Chris Dave was like, hip hop guru. And then for me, it was jazz. Like, all of a sudden, I got called by all these jazz artists. And I'll be honest, I only knew one album, maybe 2 albums, when I was a teenager. It was, John Coltrane's Love Supreme, and then Miles Davis Quintet Live at the Plaza. Like, that was it. So I knew Elvin Jones and Philly Joe Jones. And then yet, all these people are trying to get me to come in. And so I had to really get my stuff together. Thankfully to, cats like Wynton Marsalis that pulled my coattail, was like, man, you need to check out some more stuff so that your vocabulary can be more expansive. Otherwise, you're going to have limitations on how to communicate on the bandstand. And you're going to limit the bandstand. Like, people not going to feel like they can exist inside of your beat. And I heard all that. I just went to work, man. Whatever I could get my ears on, I just started listening. And he was right. And everybody, if you open to to the cats out there that's willing to give you some advice, even if it might hurt your feelings, just take it in. Just take it in. Don't take it personally. It's like there are some people out here that really do care about the music that enough that sometimes who you are as a person, if you're just respecting the music, it's a problem to them. Like for me, no. I love people. It's like you sound like how you sound. Cool. But I do respect the information that they had to give to me that helped me get myself together so that I could be who I am today.
Yeah. We should just, before we move on from that time in your life, just settle in and appreciate what you said and also what you didn't say about that high school, about HSPVA, because Chris Dave, Mark Simmons, you, Kendrick Scott, all came out of that same high school in a short amount of time. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that contemporary drumming would not be the same on many levels, certainly in the jazz space, if it weren't for that generation of players.
Yeah.
And that's just the drummers. We're not even talking about Mike Moreno or Robert Glasper or Jason Moran or Alan Hampton or James Francis or Walter Smith. All of these jazz musicians on their various instruments who came out of that same scene.
Yeah, that's true.
Throughout the years in different cities at different times, there have been these pockets. DeSable High School in Chicago in the 1950s, the High School for Performing Arts in Philadelphia in the 1980s. Yeah. There are plenty of examples of these pockets of players who come out at the same time, influence each other, and then go on to influence the world at large. And I've always wondered, what does it feel like inside one of those generations? I mean, are you aware of how special it is when it's happening?
No, it was just, man, we had Dallas too. And that was the thing. I think our friendly rival, I should say, was Dallas had their own version of a performing arts high school as well. That's what Rahul Grove went to, Erykah Badu. I mean, and then whoever didn't go to that high school came to go to North Texas. You got all the cats from Snarky Puppy, Spud. Come on, man. It's just like even Corey Henry, like all those guys. It just became a Texas thing. Even if you wasn't from Texas, just coming through vicariously, we all just, I don't know, you just fell into this pond of creativity. It was like, oh, we got to do this. And you can hear it. You can just hear it. Like the passion, the attention to detail, making sure that it not only sounds right, but it got to feel good too. I mean, it's just so many great artists that I feel like just been touched by the Texas soil somehow. And I don't think any of us really know what it is. And it's often funny to even lay claim because none of us are trying to move back.
Yeah.
Go back and visit. But it's like, no, I'm cool. But somehow, I guess maybe because there was nothing else to do, it was the only thing maybe interesting at the time. And it had a sense of community that maybe brought people together. That would be a good question if we can line all these people up and just have a panel discussion of like, what in the world is happening? Because it is special and it is unique. And sometimes I think it's even too unique. A lot of us have a hard time even setting up natural collaborations. Like I feel like if we did, it would just be great. Like I don't even know why me and Jason don't play even more. Yeah. But I think at a certain point, it's just, each other's music so well that maybe the mystery of growth gets lost. Because I mean, Jason could play with his eyes closed, and it could be all improvisational music. And I feel like we would lock up 90% of the time, which is crazy. But, then you play with somebody else that you've never played with before, and the lockup is not the same. So the search of discovery becomes invoking. Like you're like, oh man, okay, I need to figure out how to make this work. And maybe that's what adds to growth. So maybe there's a good reason that we don't play together as much as, maybe we just get bored. I don't know. These are some good questions I've been thinking in my head.
Well, I spoke to Jason Moran earlier this year, and not surprisingly, your name came up. One of the things that he said was that when he got to New York, and I think he got here a little bit ahead of you, and he heard the drummers here, he was thinking to himself, man, wait till my friend Eric gets up here. And I think what he was saying is that there was something happening, especially in the rhythm sections in Houston, and he had already played with you, and the level was very high in high school.
Oh, man. Yeah, man. I mean, case in point as to how killing he is. I felt the same way. I came to New York. I was hearing people play piano. And I would go back to the dorm room and I'd be like, bro, man, you got to come out to this jam session, man. I need somebody that's hearing something. Yeah. He was just like, nah, man, there's some cats out there. I was like, well, I don't, maybe I'm biased, but I'm not hearing it. So maybe if we go together, out there by myself. And eventually he started coming because Jason thing is that he just wanted to be in his dorm room playing video games and just listening to records, which was very wise. I was more like, I got to be in these streets. Like, I felt like just being in New York is when I felt like I had made it. I was like, oh, this is it. Like, it wasn't anything more that I wanted. Like, I'm in New York. My feet are on this Manhattan soil in which the greats of John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, Cannonball Adderley, Charles Lord, Sonny Stitt. I mean, everybody. McCoy was driving taxi cabs. I was like, this is it. Elvin Jones, Art Blakey. This is, I'm home. I'm home. So, I just took it to that. I wanted to just go out to the, to whatever clubs that, would allow someone at 18 to come in. Fortunately, it was Smalls because during that time, Smalls didn't have a bar, so it was cool. And so I would just go in and just check out the jam session and hope for a chance to sit in and get a chance to play. And then the beautiful thing about that is that by that time, this was like around 93, 94.
Yep.
Bradley's had closed. And so a lot of the legends were just looking for another spot to go, and Smalls became that spot. And so any given night, you just be down and hanging, listening to music, and Michael Brecker will walk in, Wynton will walk in, Branford will walk in if he was in town. Who was in town would just made their way down there. And so that was your first opportunity to kind of rub shoulders with those guys and maybe get some questions answered or not, get vibed. I don't know. All of it was good stuff to me. I was like, whatever you got, I'll take it. Cool, let's go. But then the Zinc Bar opened up. That was another gift because, Jeff Tain Watts just had a whole Monday residency there. You remember that? I used to make believe I was on the payphone in the back just so I could look at him from behind the kid. I was like, because he won't give me no lesson. So I just got to watch him every Monday, and I was like, that was it, man. That was blessings, man. Blessings. We take that for granted. But that was good times right there, man.
Yeah. And after that first period in New York, you went back to Texas to seminary.
Yeah, I went back to Texas to seminary. Yeah, because I just got bored. MSN wasn't what I thought it was. Jason was right. We learned way more in high school than we did at the college. And then my mom was just afraid of me being in New York. She just thought I was getting in trouble. I mean, maybe, but, I'm 18. I'm supposed to get in some trouble. I'm supposed to find something, trying to discover some life, right?
Yeah.
So she was just blowing up my phone way too much, wondering where I was, what I was doing, making sure that I wasn't, doing something bad. She was just scared. And I was like, you know what? Let me just go home for a year. Music school is not what I thought it was. And let me immerse myself in the church. Maybe that'll help her feel better. And that's what I did. It's funny. It's like I did it to make her feel better, but then I ended up learning from it so much that I became like an ordained minister. And then I went celibate for like 2.5 years. I didn't do nothing. I mean, I didn't really do anything anyway in college and stuff. I was too afraid that my mom was...
Find out, burst out of the closet, come out from under the bed.
Man, just like, it's probably safe to say. I mean, we both, smoked some weed or something. I mean, the first time I smoked weed in college, I got so high that I didn't know what to expect. And so my body went, I thought my body went paralyzed. I mean, wow. And so I started, I laid on the bed and I felt like I couldn't get up. And I was supposed to meet a friend of mine. We were supposed to go practice. And I couldn't get out of the bed. And all I kept thinking was, oh, I messed up, man. My mom's going to kill me. Oh my God, I've destroyed my whole life already. See, this is why they say don't do drugs. But of course, that passed. Like, it was just, I don't know, whatever that was, it just knocked me out. And then, then it was cool. Then I woke up and I was like, all right, cool. But that was enough for me. I was like, all right, I'm cool on that. Because I recognized that I didn't want to bring shame to my mom. I did want to experience life and I wanted to have fun, but yeah, the fear of just messing up, man, was just a little bit too much. Like not for me, I just didn't feel like my mom could take it. I just felt like she just needed her boys to do right. And so, I found my little angles in which to, to have a good time, social gatherings, like, we do our thing. But outside of that, man, I've really just tried to chill and just be available. But I guess long story short, I got bored and I was like, let me just go back to Houston. And so, I went to theology school and learned about the Lord, learned about Jesus. And I was like, man, that's a beautiful story. It really kind of took me over. And then so I started preaching the gospel. that became a whole other thing. Because then people that knew me in college was like, yo, who is this cat? Like, you were like the hanger, like we would hang and kick it. But I was like, yeah, I don't really see much difference. It's just, I just believe in this dude, Jesus, or this, whatever. And little did I know that was just going to continue on and take me down so many different paths, because there were things about that I found, okay. Religion is its own thing. I know a lot of people probably don't want to hear this, but spirituality really awoken in me. And then it wasn't just about Jesus. It became about Jesus and Buddha and, all the seekers of so-called truth. If there is a truth, I mean, who knows? Like, it's so open and it's so beautiful that, nothingness is not a bad thing. It's just being available is a wonderful thing. And just being out here is so beautiful. I mean, that's it. Oh my goodness. Oh, man. You get me in my vulnerable, man. These are my private thoughts.
Well, thank you for sharing them with me. I really feel very lucky to hear them. There's a video on YouTube of you playing a concert at Skidmore College with your Voyager project from about 5 years ago. And you opened the set, leaned into the microphone from behind the kit with this deep voice of yours, and just told the audience to quiet their mind, empty your mind, whatever it was. It was this encouragement for everybody to embrace a little bit of emptiness and a little bit of quiet. And also to sort of get synchronized on this wavelength so that when you took your time in developing it, they were all sympathetically vibrating to that thing. And it was very related to my experiences of meditation.
Relax your mind. That's all. Relax your mind. I feel like we all borrowing from the magical theme of, the current that exists. Like, that current is there. It's just whether you want to be on the wave or you want to look at it and judge and have an opinion about it. It's beautiful, man. Like I said, those are like my private thoughts. Me and my wife, we talk about this all the time. And I don't dare even share it with people because it really doesn't matter. It's more important for people to live their life, because that's a whole experience in itself. And I get a chance to listen to their experience and their interpretation of what that is. And if the moment ever feels right, because I don't have all the answers. I'm still a student trying to understand.
Well, you said something a minute ago about how as you started to pursue ministering, it didn't feel so different, if I'm understanding, from playing, that they felt like they were actually kind of part of the same process.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of another technique that I've seen you talk about that compares playing, interacting, interjecting in a musical setting to conversation. That playing is a lot like talking. And actually sometimes you try to approach the way you comp or the way you interact as if it was words, Yeah. And I loved that also because it gave me a sense that we're here to demystify this. All we're doing is having a conversation. That's all it is.
That's it. It's just conversation, which goes also back to, all the greats were correct. It's like, if you don't have enough vocabulary, it's going to be hard to conversate with those that you're playing with.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that doesn't make sense because you're like, well, I'm anticipating the beat, I'm swinging, I'm comping. Okay, the hi-hat is on 2 and 4, bass drum is doing a little flutter thing, maybe 4 on the floor, Okay, so what part of this is the communication? Oh, man, that's the best question ever. Because all of a sudden the space opens up. You don't just hear what you're doing. You hear how it affects the room, like everything else. And so then you start to hear the space between the notes, which was something I had never heard before. I was like, wow. Oh, okay. Just that space alone allows something else or nothing. But it supports, it's a foundation of what's happening in that moment. It's like matter and antimatter. In order to have matter, antimatter has to exist. So in order to have rhythm, there has to be anti-rhythm. Like, there has to be something on the other side of it. So when you can respect both, wow, you're like, oh my goodness, this is communication. And that's when everybody just starts to wake up. Like, everybody that you're playing with, you're like, they be like, oh man, I'm heard. They hear me. Like, it's just, I exist. Then in that moment,
then you go.
That's it, man.
I want to talk a little bit about your sound, though, because, I mean, what we're talking about is pretty esoteric, but there's also some really specific aspects to what you do, and it's easy to get carried away in the sort of high-level stuff.
Absolutely.
I think anybody who spent any time with your playing could probably identify you pretty quickly. And that's kind of saying a lot for a drummer. You know, I think there are certain instruments that lend themselves to being like really identifiable quickly. And then others, you know, there's a lot of great drummers who it's harder because the ride cymbal sound for a lot of people is kind of standard and the drums are set up in a kind of standard way or whatever. And some of it maybe happens in the setup and then some of it happens in the ride feel and some of it happens in the total concept. And yours is like a, you know, it's a whole unique set of conditions that you set up when you play.
I don't know if I hear it in the same way. I think the lineage aspect for me is that I'm thinking about all of those drummers when I'm playing. And at first, it didn't make sense. It was just the attempt to try, you know, I tried my hardest to sound just like Jack DeJohnette. I tried my hardest to sound like Elvin Jones, to sound like Philly Joe Jones, you know. Even though I didn't have the information like a lot of drummers now, like you could just go on YouTube and pull up some videos and you can actually see the mechanics and really get a feel for the personality because you have visual now versus for us, our generation, everything was audible. So that was definitely part of it. And then outside of that, I think the strongest foundation really came from spending as much time as possible with the drum kit. Like that's the, you know, the not so ethereal side of it. It's like, you know, it's like basic math. 2 + 2 = 4, meaning me plus this drum kit and a lot of practicing is going to end up somewhere. Like, and it's up to me how much time I dedicate to it. Even if, and I tell students this, it doesn't really matter per se what you practice right off the bat. It's just developing a relationship. Through the practice, you start to identify and get a sense of who you are in relationship to this instrument. And then the more, you know, and it could be basic stuff like just how high you want the seat. Where the placement of the cymbal is, how you want to hold a stick. Like, it's all of these kind of basic things that I could, you know, I mean, maybe they're not so basic, that helps shift your comfortability, and two, whether you can, even at a certain point, access the next level of information. And I call it the next level of information because at a certain point, you, like I said, you move past understanding that it's just 2 + 2 = 4. You can start working on some different equations. You can add a little bit of X plus Y, you know, derivative of something else. And then it's like, that becomes a whole nother experience. And so, but if you don't have the relationship with the instrument, you know, sometimes people were like, what is it that you would do? Man, I would just do the most monotonous, basic things all the time, which would mean like I would sit there and practice synchronicity because that was another thing. I was like, guess what? I will not be able to communicate with anybody else on the bandstand if my own limbs can't communicate with each other. If my left hand and my right hand is struggling, they're like, I don't know what that's doing over there. That's just all on me. Like, I have to understand the whole thing together. It's like this one vessel. So I would practice synchronicity based on tempos, meaning that they all had to move together. And I could feel like, okay, my right hand was stronger. Like it was almost like, come on, left hand, wake up. Let's go. We, you know, this is elementary. You know, we can, but it wasn't elementary to my left hand. My left hand was like, you know, you always on that ride some. I'm just kind of over here chilling. And so, and the same difference between the left foot and the right foot, which was interesting to me because my left foot was actually stronger. My right foot was more articulate, but my left foot was stronger because the left foot had to be the support anchor doing the hi-hat. And so I had to teach one another. I would say, okay, we're going to do these exercises. So right foot, today you're going to play hi-hat and feel what that feels like to try to support the rest of the drum kit. Feels horrible. Feels weird. Feel like a beginner, you can't play. But that's what you're supposed to feel like so that everything comes together. And then at a certain point, it's just all accessible. And when it's accessible, just by doing those things, then you can move into, you know, then you can shift. It's like, okay, no matter what song, no matter what tempo, no matter what meter we're playing in, my body is one. It will all adjust. There's no lockdown. There's no like, oh, I'm locked. You know, drummers get that, what I call the lock, because you get locked into playing the pattern. Everybody's playing on top of your pattern. So you get panicked. You're like, well, I can't leave this pattern because I feel like everything is going to fall apart. It's like, no, it's not. If you don't know that from experience, then the lock got you. You're just sitting there like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. It's like I'm frozen in time. I'm just waiting on this song to be over. And so, I always be like, for things like that, I always say practice free. Just set a metronome. And there's a lot of brain activity. I mean, man, shut me up anytime, man. I just be rambling.
No. You got me thinking about a lot of things, but keep going, please.
There's a lot of brain activity there's a lot of brain activity, but there are a lot of things that the brain is naturally understanding on its own. I learned this from a great tennis coach. Me and Aaron Goldberg had this conversation a bunch of times. I found it interesting that tennis coach was like, he's like, you think you learn tennis while you're sitting out here taking a tennis lesson? He was like, no, you learn tennis when you go to sleep. And this is like the rest of your body, has a break. And it's like your mind is talking, your brain is actually talking to your muscles. And they're trying to work it out because there's like, obviously this person is trying to achieve something and they can't feel the rhythm or the timing in which something is supposed to happen. It's like, it's just off. So that's why it's enough to introduce a concept to someone. And then the brain is going to take care of the rest. And then the next time, if you just keep introducing it, you just get better and better at it. It's just that. To get drummers not to fall into this lock, I was like, just practice free.
Yeah. Because
if you understand freedom, then you will never get stuck in time. Like you know that there's space somewhere else. You just gotta, you gotta get it where your brain and your muscles don't freak out about it. And it's like your brain is telling your muscles like, oh yeah, you're limber. It's like, oh, cool. And so you relax into, the next pulse. And you start to hear the pulse instead of just things being like dictated time, so to say.
Well, there's this idea that like drummers have time, right? And in order to have the time, that you need to be playing the time. Mm-hmm. I think the scariest thing is, as a drummer, once you stop playing the time,
right,
then it's really a question of, is that time still in you? Are you still able to feel that pulse and communicate that pulse to the rest of the band if you're not the one who's playing every quarter note?
Man, look, I look at it like this. Everybody's hearing the time. They're just hearing who's in the time and who's not. So that becomes the argument on the stage. It's just like, dude, I don't think you're listening. And that's the funny thing. You like, of course I'm listening. It's like, nah, man, because the pulse, like, everybody's in this car. Yep. You're somewhere over here. You're like walking over here somewhere.
Yep.
And that's cool. We just thought maybe in the band meeting we would bring it up. Like,
you might want to get in the car with us since we're all going to the same place.
Trying to play this tune. That's the thing. Like time, it's a joint effort. It's a joint effort. It's a everybody at once feeling, which I think is something so brilliant. You want to talk about synergy and alliance and friendship and brotherhood, sisterhood on a level. I mean, just do a documentary on people getting in a band and having to play time together. I mean, so much shows up in there, so much judgment, so much blame. But then you get to these points of surrender and ecstasy because, something wonderful happened because you actually went on this journey together. Like, it's so revealing and so fulfilling on so many levels. Most of my arguments have been within bands.
Yeah.
For all those various reasons, it's because something there is so special that it deserves to be communicated. It deserves to be talked about. It deserves to be experienced. And, again, that's just gratitude, grateful.
Yeah.
All the GOATs out there, Terrence Blanchard, Greg Osby, Joe Henderson, Betty Carter. I was talking to my wife last night about Betty Carter. So she was the one that really brought me back to New York. Greg Osby was probably the first one that hit me up after going to seminary school. And he was like, man, I got this tour. I've been looking for you. I don't know where you went. And I was like, man, I came back home. I'm in Houston. He was like, okay, you want to go to Europe?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, okay. Cool. It was so weird too, man. Trying to go to Europe and be a jazz musician, but you're a minister, you're celibate. You don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't do nothing. Everybody was just looking at me like, who are you?
Were you also evangelizing? Were you trying to spread the gospel? Was that part of your thinking when you went over there?
No. Betty Carter hit me to that. It was funny. Like, she had these great stories about Mark Carey and Greg Hutchinson. Like, they first became like devout, Islamic, and, they was going around trying to hip everybody to the Quran and stuff. That was the real aspect about being around Betty Carter. I don't know what made her do this, but all of a sudden, one time, she wanted me in her band. And so she was like, look, come live with me. And I was like, oh well, now I don't know about that. That's kind of, she was like, I don't mean like that, boy. And she was like, I have this ground floor apartment. that used to belong to my son. And you're welcome to stay there as long as you're playing in my band. And I was like, oh, so, cool. And that's what encouraged me to move back to New York. And this was probably around about 97. And man, we would just have these talks on the because, she lived in a brownstone. So she had like the top 3 floors. And then there were stairs, in the front of the brownstone.
Yeah.
New York. This is for people who don't know brownstone in New York.
Yep.
There's these stairs. One that goes up and then one that takes you to the ground floor apartment, And so we would meet on the stoop and then we would just talk. And man, she had these stories about everybody back in the day and even everybody current. Like she was always listening to musicians, just checking out and seeing where their headspace was. And she always gave the most practical, understandable analysis. I was like, she's a guru. She's a sage. Like she just got it. She understood it. And if you was around Betty Carter, you were going to understand. Like she knew how to interplay inside of you and just to kind of get you to do the magic. One time we was playing a ballad, right? This is a good one for drummers. Drummers, a lot of drummers don't know how to play ballad. I didn't either. Betty broke it down very simple. She looked at me, she said, would you want to hear an air condition just go on and on and on and on forever? And I was just like, of course not. She was just like, then stop doing that with the brushes. And then I was like, oh, snap. You're not supposed to just be like, shh. Just going in circles. Like, yeah, I'm playing a ballad. I'm playing soft. Shh. She was like, dude, listen. And I was like, oh, okay. So, make a little sweep. Shh. And then you hear that silence. And then, man, it just wakes up the tune. And then you choose when you go back into it. It's like, ooh, right here. Oh, maybe just a little hi-hat, softer. Or maybe loud, or maybe sticks. It's just magic. And all she had to say was, do you want to hear an air conditioner? It's just logic, just simple logic.
And she also hipped you to the idea of not taking too much of the seminary mentality with you.
Absolutely.
Socially in the band.
She was like, that was the funny part, because when Greg and Mark Carey went Islamic, there were certain things they couldn't eat. And then, so she loved making fun of them on the road when they would go to certain places and there was no food for them to eat. And she was like, look at y'all, just starving for reasons you don't even understand the need to starve for either. And I was like, Betty, you cold. You so cold. But I love you though. You so cold. Yeah, I just, it was something that I kept to myself because I wasn't 100% sure. I just, it was still fairly fresh to me too. I'm a young mind, 20, 21. What do I know? It's hard to explain. Like she was just one of those people you had to be around. Like she loved letting me drive. Like some of the tours, like, she was like, all right, you driving us to the airport. And I was like, okay. And I remember we'd just be in a car and then she would just go, And I'd be like, why is she doing that? And then one day I just asked her, I was like, yo, what's up? She was like, oh, you can tell a lot about a person by the way they drive.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, okay. And it's true. I mean, it seems so weird, but not so much. The thoughtfulness and the way you consider it about other drivers, safety protocols. What are you paying attention to? How is the passenger reacting to the way that you're driving? Or do they feel safe? Or are you just one of those people that's just like, it's my car. I drive how I drive and good luck, because those are the kind of things that show up on the bandstand. It's just like, are you a compassionate enough individual musically?
Yes.
That every song is not about you? And are you sensitive enough to hear that someone else may have somewhere they need to go? You need to just move out of the way. It's just all these different components. And even maybe I'm making it too deep, but it felt that deep to me that, she was aware of just these core things using just basic everyday awareness. It didn't take rocket science to try to figure it out. She was just like, I see some things that might get in your way.
Yeah, right.
To this day, I'm grateful. I mean, McCoy Tyner too, man. McCoy, he would just take care of you on the bandstand.
You said earlier you had 2 records. I mean, when you first started getting called to play jazz gigs in high school, you knew 2 jazz records, and one of them, McCoy is playing on the record.
Absolutely.
And 5 years later, 7 years later, not too long later, there you are playing with McCoy, one of the first people you knew about.
Man, that was, in theory, we say it was a miracle. Metaphysics at its best, think it and it shall be, love it enough and it'll show up at your doorstep. So many books on that. But in actuality, what really happened was Betty Carter, we got a chance to open up for McCoy in Lebanon. And it was at this jazz festival. And it was there. And I think McCoy even had it mixed up because he came to my high school and he did a master class. And for some reason, when he heard me play, he wasn't too far off, but the drummer that he played with in the master class was my bro, Mark Simmons, who was killing, So Mark Simmons left enough impression on McCoy and me as well. Of course, I started sounding like my bro. That when McCoy heard me with Betty, he was like, "Man, was you that bro? You remember at the high school, And I was like, I think that was my homie, but
But I'm here.
Right. Like, But then that was it. That was just the whole, because, what's his name? Avery Sharp and Aaron Scott was playing with him at the time. And, that was his trio. They were doing their thing. And so time passed. So that was around about 98. But then, around 2002, so 4 years later after that,
yep,
I get this call out of the blue. Man, McCoy found out a way through somebody, got my phone number. And it was a rough year. Some things happened. September 11 had just happened. And then, things were slow, kind of like now, the virus, like you just don't know. A lot of uncertainty. My son was just born. My son was actually born September 7th. So it was like 4 days before 9/11. And, we had came back home and we was just like, yo, we got to move. That was prompted our move to move to PA.
Uh-huh.
Like, we want to be close to New York, but not that close, just in case something else jump off.
Yep.
A little safe distance away. But yeah, I got this call like in the middle of the day, it was just like a New York number. Then you wasn't really screening your calls to voicemail. It was just kind of like, you answered and it was, Harland, Harland. I was like, yeah, it's Eric Harland. Hey, man, it's McCoy time. You busy next week? And I was like, man, I froze. And he wasn't even trying to offer me the gig then. He just said, I just want to play. Can we just do duo? I'm going to get a recording studio room where we can it'd be piano and drums. We just play.
Mm.
And he tried to pay me to play with him. I was like, you don't get any sweeter than this right here, man. I was like, he was just like, man, you gave your time. You deserve to be paid. I was like, bruh, the payment was in everything that you played. And then, that just became our relationship. He was just like, man, I need to weigh this out a little bit more and, see if there's some changes that can be made. But I see a future of us playing together. And I was thankful at that. I was like, cool. And lo and behold, man, it happened. Like I got the call, and, from his management. It was like, all right, here's the tour. Can you make it? I was like, absolutely. And that's how I got a chance to meet Bobby Hutcherson. I was just like, oh man, this is not happening. It was, man. It was so beautiful. I got so many stories about it all. I mean, all the greats have a different, unique story in their own way.
Yes. Charles Lloyd.
Oh man, I got way too many stories about Charles. But Charles, I mean, he's a sage, man. Charles was the first person that I would honestly say that taught me patience. Because, I think we all have always been in a rush and in a way really desiring to make an impact so fast about certain things. And Charles was just like, man, the universe don't care about that, right? and I was like, okay, I get that. He was just like, well, it doesn't really matter whether you get it. It's like, it gets you. It's like, I was like, oh man, just slowed my whole world all the way down. And in a way, it brought me back to myself, or brought me back to the self, to the thing, and it really worked just being able to be around him on a constant basis, because it's not what you think. Like, he allows himself to go on these tangents and stuff like that. Like he'll become uneasy about something, and then he really goes into the uneasiness about it. And so naturally you want to be like, man, what was all that spiritual stuff you was telling me about? Like, why are you getting all worked up? He was just like, oh, you still not free yet. Okay. And it was just like, wow, I'm still sitting here judging stuff. It's just magnificent, man. You pinpoint and you're still trying to craft a rule book a guideline for people to follow, not understand, just like music. It happens. There's no book. I mean, there are books, but there's no guideline to really follow if you're trying to be in the moment, truly in the moment with the music. And the same thing with people. You're trying to be truly in the moment with people. Energies arise and you have to be there. And then you decide how to support, where to be, where to exist within that moment, not just go like, man, you made a mistake. He was just like, no, it's up to me to pretty much say if I made the mistake, because it's something I have to live with. Why are you putting on that on as your backpack? Why are you not going to live with that? And now, why are you going to make that like, your next chapter of response or something to prove? That's a waste of time.
Well, I think at the heart of all of this conversation about whether or not it's about how you play or what you say or how you are, how you act, how you drive, whatever.
Right.
What I hear embedded, wrapped up in all of it is expectation.
Yes.
And freeing yourself of any expectation.
Absolutely.
Because you can't be present if you're expecting some specific outcome.
Absolutely. That's it. That's a wrap. You just did it. That was it. Boom.
Man, I know our time is limited now, and I never do this, but I'm just going to throw some names and ideas at you. I just want to hear your response to them, because that seems to be going well. That seems to be working. Because it seems clear to me that all of the people that you have really spent serious time with have impacted you, and that you have really thoughtful impressions of them.
Yeah.
And particularly the older generation. So maybe you can tell me a little about your relationship with Dave Harland.
Man, and what's funny is that's probably one of the weirdest relationships I could try to explain. Like Dave, he's everything that you would think of an air sign. As earthy as he is, his earth is in the clouds. And he really walks with no judgment. Or if he has one, you would never know that bad boy. It's just like he's so pure in his own way that it took me a while to just think like, man, what is his angle? Like, cause you tend to think everybody has an angle. Like you spend enough time with him, you're like, man, what is this about this cat? Yeah, he's just Dave. And I think that in itself is what describes Dave Harland. Like he's just Dave. Like he doesn't try to be anything else except for himself. Mm-hmm. And who he is just this energy that just is in the clouds. It's there for you. It's totally supportive, totally, does all the considerate things, but he's just available. He's available. Like you bring in some new music, he's like, all right, cool, let's play it. And you're like, okay, cool. Like most people, you're like, really? Man, I only got so much time and, I want to get some food in or something. Like Dave, he just allows himself to be there. And, it's so funny. I wish there was so much more I could say. But that's the deepest aspect about him that I've learned to appreciate. And I feel like that's what helped us lock together even more on the bandstand, was that he just goes. He anchors, but he has a way of anchoring the music, but at the same time, like he can flow with you. And there's just no direction that just really doesn't make sense. And he does that rhythmically and harmonically. Because, I'm not throwing harmonies at him, but, I've talked to like Lionel, and Lionel be like, man, that harmonic line that he walked, like it just walked right through the progression as like he knew or was even leading me to the next progression. I was just like, man, that's why he's Dave Harland, man.
Yeah. Well, I know, I hear what you're saying. And part of it is like he is as nice to play with as he seems like he is as a person,
Absolutely. Like he's one of the few people that still he don't even waste his time trying to text, like he'll call you to ask you the question that he wants to call, just to hear your voice, says a few things, and then he's cool. He don't try to hold you all day. He's just like, man, just checking in, just seeing how you're doing. Obviously very comfortable with who he is, and he just walks that walk.
I spoke to Chris Potter a couple years ago, and your name also obviously came up. And, one of the things I just noted to him is that it seems like you have been really important on his journey. Like as he's sort of putting projects together, whatever, 9 times out of 10, if there's going to be 2 musicians on stage, it's going to be him and you. If there's going to be 3, it's going to be him and you and another one. But it's like he really enjoys the dynamic between the two of you.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That was one of those things that was just special from day one. You just know when you like somebody, musically, non-musically, even when we kind of, when it seems like we disagree, we don't even disagree. I don't know. That's one of those things you can't explain. It's just somebody you just become like a true brotherhood with, it becomes more than just a friendship where it's like, you see them occasionally or whatever. Like we actually like one another, and that, I think sometimes that's hard to find. Like there are a lot of people that you tend, and I'm just honest opinion, there are people that you just can tolerate. You're like, I wouldn't want to spend all my time around this person. I barely want to spend all my time around anybody.
Hey, man, I don't even want to spend all my time around myself.
Hey, there we go. So, I don't know how that transpired or what happened, but it was just, we just really, really became cool. And I think they always say it's very important, the people that you tour with, because that's what ends up happening. You spend a lot of time on the road and then you start to share your interests, tunes that you've been checking out. And, he's seen me at a lot of my vulnerable stages, because we fly a lot. We're away from family. And sometimes you just have one of them emotional days where you've been on the road too long. And lo and behold, you're in the plane, and that low oxygen, it makes that movie just a little bit more emotional. And then you're sitting back there with a couple of tears going down. And you're trying to be like, nah, man, I'm cool. And then, you just start having those, very impactful discussions with one another. And it's just to the point to where there's nothing to hold back from each other. And then that starts to happen on the bandstand. So maybe it's that. Like I feel like with Chris, I could get on stage and literally play anything and it just wouldn't bother him. Like he would just be like, oh, he's doing that thing today. And I feel the same thing about him. It's like, I'm like, play whatever, dude. Like there's nothing you can play that would make me go like, he doing that thing. And I think that sense of openness that we have with each other just makes it fun. Like the burden of there's something I have to do is just not there. And so I definitely appreciate him for that. Yeah. And the fact that he still calls me. It's like, man, he could call anybody. He's such a bad dude. Like, I'm like, dude, you know how many cats want to play with you right now? It's drummers you ain't even heard of. Killer. They just waiting.
Well, don't tell them who they are, man.
I know. Now, I be trying to hook them. Man, I've suggested so many drummers just because I want, like, one of my favorites. I still want to hear them play. I don't know how that would come out, but that drummer, Mike Mitchell, I love that dude. He's a beast. I would just like to hear them just go at it. Like, I feel like the molecules in that room just explode somehow. Me and Chris, we find our way. I mean, he's such a good dude, man. He's just genuinely good person that's honestly always trying to do the right thing. And I respect that. I totally respect that.
So, okay, now I'm just going to revert to hearsay, things that I think may be part of your kind of bag of tricks.
Okay.
One thing that has emerged among a certain subset of jazz musicians is a kind of obsession with natural wine. Oh. And I have heard that you have a little bit of a wine thing.
I love wine. Man, if I wasn't a musician, I wanted to be a sommelier. So, kind of early on, and again, it was Betty that really got me into it. Like, she kept trying to give me red wine on the road. I was like, Betty, I don't drink. She was like, drink it. And I was just like, okay, I was tasted. And so, I started tasting here and there. And I was like, wow, I like this. Because I was trying to find something to move away. Like, throughout my dietary needs, I started giving up a lot of things. Like, I just gave up sugar.
Yeah.
So I stopped eating desserts just like entirely. Like I haven't had a dessert in probably like 15 years. I gave up soda water, just all these high fructose, corn syrup, all that stuff. I was just like, I don't want any of that in my body. So I just started giving all that up. So I just started drinking sparkling water and natural juices. But then natural juices too, we have a lot of sugar too. So I was like, man, it'd be nice to have something like if I'm having dinner or lunch or whatever, just with a little vibe. Wine became that thing. The more I learned about it and how wine was like this pretty much like ever-growing beverage, right? It's like there's still bacteria in it that causes it to age. So, when it becomes oxidized, when it's open, it's like the character of the wines continues to evolve, continues to develop and all this kind of stuff. And so people really get to the natural wine thing because it doesn't have the pesticides and all that kind of stuff in it. Because for a lot of people, the pesticides is what causes them to get headaches and all this kind of stuff. But no, I'm not super into like, the wine doesn't have to be natural wine for me. Like I think that's another, fad, just kind of like yoga, like I love yoga, but it doesn't have to be like yoga, just yoga, It's like, you're stretching. That's cool. You're meditating. Boom. That is. Now it don't have to be like yoga.
Doesn't have to be the natural thing. Yeah.
Wow, you got pesticides in your wine. It's like it's cool. Okay, But the guys who do it, like Ben Street, man, Ben and Mike Marino, those guys are.
I thought maybe Matt Penman would have put you onto it in the James Farm days because I know he's a deep natural wine guy.
Man, that's what I'm saying. Back in the day, I don't think any of us were like really pushing it that much. I think it's one of those things that has become more popular since we've gotten older, and just a little bit more time on your hands. So you're like, oh, let me try some natural wine. To be honest, I think the person who brought even the idea of natural wine to James Farm was Aaron Parks. Because I remember he would show up to some of the gigs. He was like, man, I found this natural wine store. We should try this out. And I was like, wow. He was also the first person that turned me on to like orange wine, which is like wine from the country Georgia. They, it's like a white wine, but they allow the grape skins to also age with the actual wine. So it changes the color, makes it orange. And just kind of gives it a more minerally deeper taste. I was like, wow, this is great. It's great. Yeah, the community is strong, man. The community is strong. I've never been into like hard alcohol. I mean, I've never been into alcohol that much, but wine was something that I felt like I could get into. And because I had a bad thing in college, man. Like I didn't know you wasn't supposed to drink the whole bottle of rum. It's just like it tasted good. It felt good. So I just kept going. And I was just like, And the next morning, man, I just felt so horrible, dude. I felt so bad. I would say anything that makes me feel this bad the next day, I don't need that. I just don't need it. And so I hadn't really been drinking it. So it was easy to just let go. Like I was like, I just won't do that. But wine was definitely something. Oh man, my favorite is George Mraz, bass player. That dude loves some wine. He was the one that turned me on to him and Jackie Terrace, and they turned me on to like Bordeaux. Mm-hmm. And then going on the road with Jackie Terrace, and we was always doing shows at these, chateaus. And that was some of the most complex wine I had tasted then. And so, you just develop a palate over the years. You develop a palate. You start to, now I can categorize, New Zealand Pinot Noir is different from California Pinot Noir. Or if the grapes were from, maybe France, but they grew them in California because they wanted the soil and the climate and all that kind of stuff. And those were the fun games we started having on the road, especially like that was like me and some Matt Penman stuff. Like, yo, all right, I got one for you. I don't think you can get this one either. But of course, Matt would always get it. Like his knowledge of wines is so far superior. And people think I know a lot, but I'm like, nah, that dude.
Sometimes I think I should start a second podcast and it's just jazz musicians talking about wine. Like that's the whole thing. Just get your wine recommendations from jazz musicians.
That would be great.
I talked to Bill Stewart years ago, and he's deep into wine also. And after the interview was over, I asked him about it. And he told me that he got into the wine he's into after having gone all over the world and tried all these different wines from all different regions and feeling like they all kind of tasted the same. He said they tasted like they all went to the Berkeley School of Winemaking. And that's when he started thinking about the individual character of the wine, looking for the unique identity of the wine. Sometimes I think maybe the reason jazz musicians appreciate it is because they appreciate one another's individuality in the spirit of being unique and being yourself. And that's what you want your wine to do, is just be itself, whatever it is.
Yes, absolutely. Wow, I like how you put that together. That is true, yeah. Yeah, you can appreciate what's special about it. And unique, because in theory, you want to be able to appreciate that aspect of yourself.
Right, exactly. You try to find it every corner of the world, including what you drink.
Absolutely.
Eric Harland, thank you for putting all that together today and for taking this time.
Thank you, man. I knew this was going to be a blast. Thanks, Leo.
Be well. Thanks, man. Bye.
All right, bud.
There he was, Amanda.
There he was.
Eric Harland.
What a hang.
What a hang. Good hang, right?
Great hang.
I'll be back again before you know it with another deep dive. Until then.
Talk to you soon.
This has been a WBGO Studios production. To learn more about WBGO Studios' award-winning podcasts, special concerts, live streams, and more, visit wbgo.org/studios.